Thanks for downloading another segment from the Best of the Classic Metal Show. The Classic Metal Show is heard live on Saturdays from 9 p.m. to 3 a.m. Eastern, exclusively at www.theclassicmetalshow.com. And now here's another piece of Classic Metal Show history on the Best of the Classic Metal Show.
The Classic Metal Show.
It is your Classic Metal Show right here on theclassicmetalshow.com. That's Doomed by the Living Dead, Merciful Fate. And
I think you're all fucked in the head.
Thank you, Mr. Leary.
No kidding, wow.
And that goes out to Sean in Rockland, wherever Rockland is.
You know Rockland.
Rockland. I don't know where Rockland is. So, Sean, whoever you are, there's your song for you.
Yeah, enjoy that.
So anyway, we ran through. I think I played more music there in the last 15, 20 minutes in a row than we have in months.
So we're done, right? No more music tonight?
Yeah, we don't have to play any more music tonight. We're done.
That's good, man, because got it all out of the way. It's all done in the first hour. Now we can just talk all night.
Sure, absolutely. So anyway, coming up here in just a couple of minutes, for the third time tonight, we're going to be speaking with DX Ferris, who just now popped into the chat room.
Yes, he found his way. Apparently that link to TalkingMetal.net got him right there.
Yeah, he was able to follow the instructions at TalkingMetal.net and jump right in.
Yeah, exactly.
If DX can follow those instructions, I'm sure you could too. If you want to jump in the chat room, just follow the instructions over there at TalkingMetal.net, and that'll get you right into the chat room.
Yep, exactly. Just follow the pointer.
Exactly. So, anyway, DX Ferris wrote a book on Slayer. Unlike Eric Braverman, who also wrote a book on Slayer. Well, he wrote the book on Slayer, or a book on Slayer. What did he write? The book on Slayer, or a book?
Eric Braverman wrote the book on Slayer that appears in the what is that called? The Sounds of the Apocalypse box set.
Whoa! Wow! Yuck!
Easy, Eric. Easy. It's not your week. But DX's book is called 33 1/3 Rain in Blood by DX Ferris, and absolutely, you know what? And I'm not just saying it because he's coming on, and I'm not just saying it because I know DX personally. This book fucking rules, man. I mean, it is for $10. You're not going to get a better read.
I wrote the book on Slayer. Shut up.
Well, sorry, Eric, but you've been pushed aside tonight, pal.
You guys ever need, or you want me to go cover something for you and report in? Because I go to a lot of neat stuff.
Hey, me again.
This guy's a leech on the show, I swear to God.
Here's the magic number.
I say we just roll.
First time call, I've already been here 3 times, you know.
Yeah, I was actually going to give the guy a proper intro and maybe play some Slayer and then bring him on like a professional radio show, but he's just
I can call back. You can do that.
He's just chomping at the bit to be part of the show tonight.
Nice. So what's up, DX?
I'm just hanging out. I'm confused. The phone experience alone was a little disorienting, and now this chat room thing, it's put the zap on my head.
And how is it surfing gay porn sites? Is that working for you too?
You got me.
Yeah, you've been rickrolled in a different kind of way, my friend.
You know what? I thought it was some kind of clever intro or something, some kind of smoke screen. I had to dig around for a while, too. So after like 5 minutes, I was like, nah, I'm pretty sure this isn't the site.
And all the while, the infamous words of the band Rat were rolling through his head, round and round.
If you haven't visited TalkingMetal.net, either do yourself a favor and do it, or do not.
All right, Chris, why don't you go ahead and run with this guy, since you are a friend and whatever, since I haven't gotten the proper intro.
All right, well, obviously the name of the book, as we've been saying, is 33 1/3 Rain and Blood by DX Ferris. And probably, for me personally, the thing I like best about the book is the fact that it's not it's not the standard retrospective bullshit that everybody does. I mean, it focuses in not on Slayer as a band and, the ups and downs of their 20 plus years, but it takes a moment, it takes their defining moment in a lot of people's eyes, and it really tears it down to what was going on, what was happening. You really understand what it was like when they were recording the record. So, I guess maybe that's a good place to start, DX. Why, not that it's any big secret, but why did you choose to focus in on Rain and Blood and write this book specifically about that one record?
Well, can I curse on the air?
Yes.
Oh, we're not on the air, so I can curse, right?
Oh, we're on the air, but you can curse anyway. This is internet, my friend.
Because fucking Slayer, man. That's why. Hey, the reason that I did a book about Rain and Blood is that the book is part of a series. You said it was called 33 and a Third, Rain and Blood. And the 33 and a Third series is a series of books. There are like 60 of them right now, give or take. Each one by a different author, each one about a classic album. So it's everything from like the Beach Boys to the Beastie Boys. And this is the first full-on modern heavy metal one. And if you're going to do one of those, where better to start than Rain and Blood?
Right.
I wrote the book on Slayer. Shut up.
Yeah, now, have you ever read, we can go there, have you ever read that book on Slayer by Eric Braverman in the Slayer box set?
No, I have not, interestingly enough.
Some Slayer fan you are.
Let's not get away from metal.
I was real limited. I was trying to track down stuff that nobody else had read before, and like the one thing that everybody has and knows, I didn't get that. But I think I got some other stuff that other people didn't get,
Sure. Well,
My partner, Ron Patsy, and I wrote the book.
Well, DX, with Rain and Blood, I read the book from cover to cover in about a day, and
Thank you.
I've got to, I have.
And thanks for having me, by the way.
Oh, no problem. But the thing that I found most interesting, and I don't want to share everything that's in the book, but the one thing that I found most interesting in the book was your little, I don't know if you call it a chapter or a subchapter or what, but the chapter on Tom Araya where you basically point out a fact that I think a lot of people forget, and that's that Tom really didn't do a lot of lyrical writing until the band was fairly well established. Why do you think it was that even though Tom was there from the beginning, that he was not a more active participant in the writing of lyrics and songs?
Well, I can speculate a little bit. And in fact, even to back up, part of what we do in the book is that instead of giving because a lot of people that read this series and a lot of people that pick up the book just because it's part of this series don't know who Slayer is, really. And I didn't want to, I couldn't write like a full biography of the band, so what I did in this book was I did kind of short profiles of all four of the band members and of some of the other key people involved in it. So you get a little bit of the story of Tom's life, of Carrie's life, of Jeff, of Rick Rubin, of Andy Wallace, the guy who engineered it, and nothing big has ever been written about him before. So that way you kind of put it together piece by piece, so to speak. So instead of saying, well, Slayer formed in 1980 whatever, and they were immediately a definitive thrash band, you kind of get like a look at them in a different sort of way. And Tom, to answer your question, Tom was the singer of the band, but Tom did not score a songwriting credit until South of Heaven, in 1988, and that was the band's, fourth proper album.
Right.
So, the reason why not was that, Kerry King and Jeff Hanneman were really the big dogs in the band, and, not that the other guys were not significant, but it was pretty much their band. Something that comes out in this book is, because everybody knows Slayer, everybody knows the records, but so little has been really written about them in depth that, even though we all kind of know them and we all know their body of work, we don't really know what the dynamics were behind the band. So even when I started to write this book, I realized, like, wow, who are these guys? How does the band really work? And something that I found out was, how much it is Kerry King's band over the years. Even around the time of Rain and Blood, if you picked up an interview, you heard from Jeff and you heard from Tom Araya. And, it's kind of like, if you grew up and you watched The Who and you always thought, well, Roger Daltrey's the guy singing it, so he must be writing the lyrics, right?
Right.
Not exactly. So something that I found out and something that I think will surprise a lot of people is that Kerry King, who, in later years obviously has stepped up and been very much the voice of the band and the face of the band, how in control he was. He was always kind of the quality control guy of the band and, the sort of unofficial captain and team leader of it. Even though this is very much a Jeff Hanneman album, probably his high point in the band, I think.
Sure.
Does that answer your question? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, man. How what's interesting about that though is the fact that at this isn't it right at this exact same point in time when Kerry was trying to be in Megadeth as well?
No, that was early on. That was, I think, like 85-ish, give or take. I mean, Kerry played the first few live shows that Megadeth did, if I recall correctly.
Right.
I forget exactly what those dates are, but Kerry, he was, which is, still kind of a rare fact in metal. I mean, Kerry was in Megadeth briefly.
Yeah, no kidding, man. Well, the interesting thing, too, about Rain and Blood, and really about Slayer as a band, is, and you touched on it briefly, is about how influential Jeff Hanneman was. And I swear, other than hardcore fans, I don't think most average people, average listeners would even pull his name if you told them to name the guys in Slayer.
Yeah, I mean, he, I certainly do not know these guys personally or well. I don't mean to over-represent, how well I researched them or, bonded with them. But, Jeff he's just become a recluse, I mean, he does some interviews, but getting close to that guy and really talking to him, it just doesn't happen that often. And none of the Slayer guys, as you see in the book, none of them are like the super introspective type to really sit down and talk about, their feelings and what was going on and what was going through their head when they wrote the song. So it takes a lot to pull that out of them. And Jeff, in recent years, if you read Blabbermouth like 19 times daily, as I do,
right.
You think Slayer, you think Kerry King, and Hanneman just has, since the 1990s, he's really increasingly taken a back seat. And even though he's still very much an active member of the group and very much a creative force, he's not in the limelight much anymore,
Yeah. Now, an interesting thing that, you and I probably know and nobody else, including Neely, knows is that when, I don't know if it was the only time that you had access to the band, but it was one of the times that you had access to the band when you were writing the book. You and I had the privilege of standing in the same office for 45 minutes.
Yeah, we did.
These guys.
We did.
Man.
That was in Cleveland. That was just about a year ago.
Right.
They were playing Cleveland, and at that point, I thought that it was going to be the only time that I could talk to Hanneman and talk to Lombardo, because those guys are hard to get a hold of and they don't talk much. So their publicist, who is tremendous, she hooked me up with him, and I was supposed to talk to him at I think it was 5:30 or something, and they were taking the stage 7:30 or 8.
Right.
And I was supposed to meet him at such and such a time, and I got there, and they didn't have me on the list, and they weren't ready, and so I had this real short window to talk to Jeff Hanneman and to talk to Dave Lombardo, and I just kept getting pushed back, and it kept getting later and later and later, and by the time I got backstage, I was just in full-on panic mode, oh my God, this is the one time I thought I was going to be able to talk to him, and I was just looking around okay, people, and I didn't even take the time to register you because I was in such an adrenalized panic. But yeah,
Sure.
If you go to Blabbermouth and you look for some of the Yabo TV interviews from July 2007. Those were shot by one Chris Aiken.
Yeah, and interesting.
And I did, by the way, I did wind up hooking up with Slayer later on, so I was not limited to that one brief talk.
Sure. Well, interestingly
time,
enough
was,
about the Yibo TV stuff is every good question I ask, they cut out. They are control freaks about their image, man, which makes it interesting to me. I went through it firsthand. I asked a bunch of questions. I asked Tom Araya about if he planned on, if they ever considered kicking Carrie out of the band, after the whole Megadeth thing. And Tom was like, yeah, we did, And then meanwhile, management, of course, said, that's not going to fly.
Really?
Yeah.
Man, that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it was Tom and I had a long talk about it. But what I guess where I'm going with this is I found out firsthand how controlling Slayer's management is today about their image and everything about it. How were you able to get some of the stuff that's here in Rain and Blood, your book, past Slayer's management, or did they not make you, submit prior to publishing?
No, it was free, unfettered access. I interviewed them and I wrote it. I didn't have to run it past them. It's not. Even though everybody in the band, I interviewed for it a couple times. I interviewed their Slayer, their manager. I talked to, a lot of people in their camp, but I didn't have to clear anything past them. There was no vetting process, nothing like that. So I was able to, get what they said and, present it straight to you, which is nice.
Well, the one thing that I did see is, you interviewed a shitload of people, man. I mean, the list of people that are quoted, even if it's a single quote or multiple quotes and stuff, what you interview, 60, 70 people?
The book is culled from a total of about 80 interviews. Some of those are different interviews with the same people, like, a couple times for this guy and a couple times for that guy. But it's 80 original interviews in addition to 25 years worth of archival material, old metal magazines, old, well, there aren't books, it's the first Slayer book, but 25 years of stuff on Slayer. But part of what I did was, so it wasn't just me saying, well, Slayer's the most respected metal band and you have to take my word on it. I thought I would get a lot of different artists, musicians, fans, and get what they thought of Slayer. So the final count of that, I talked to over 50 musicians, artists, people you would know, everyone from the musician Tori Amos, Roger Murray from Agnostic Front, all the way to a guy like Paul Romano, the guy that did the artist who did all the album covers for Mastodon. Just getting his input on what made the album cover good. Kat Von D I talked to about the same thing. You're a famous artist. What do you think about this album? So the final count for people that made it into the book was 47 different musicians, artists, fans just weighing in on why this is a good album. Because, the whole thing with music books is, so much you get a book and it's 100, 150 pages of, I'm a big fan, and I think this record rules, and it rules because I like it, and I like it because it rules. Well, what if you're a douchebag? The whole book is ruined at that point, So hopefully you can pick up this book, even thinking I'm a douchebag, and you can still find out what Matt Pike thinks about Altar of Sacrifice. And that's what
I can call Tom Araya right now.
Nice. Well, DX, you want to take some phone calls from some other douchebags that happen to be listening?
Yeah, I don't know if they're douchebags, but I can vouch for myself, And you know what? Part of this is so amazing because I'm a lifelong metal guy, and just the opportunity to be part of the metal press for a second is amazing to me, So thanks again. And then people that are listening, they just make it happen. Metal's never going to go away, and it's still here, and it's still strong. And the kind of person that is listening to your show on a Saturday night is what keeps metal alive. And we also talk about that in the book a little bit, because so many people that are going to be reading the book don't really know what metal is all about. They're just picking it up because maybe Rick Rubin's name is attached to it, or maybe Andy Wallace's name is attached to it. This is the metal people, I was writing the book thinking, I cannot be the guy that fucked up a Slayer book. I have to get it right for the metal people because they will fucking kill me.
Yeah, no
and
kidding.
I hope I did it right. So that said, let's take some calls. Sorry about that.
Hello?
Hello?
The CMS phone lines are now open. Give us a call at 1-800-497-5891 and let your opinion be heard. Call now. It's 1-800-497-5891.
The Classic Metal Show.
Were you talking to our bumper there, DX?
I was trying not to.
Hello?
We're pros here. We have all kinds of stuff.
All right, if you want to talk to DX Ferris about his Slayer book, 800-497-5891. If you're a Slayer fan, you want to jump in here, get in on the discussion. I'm sure he'd be glad to answer any questions you might have. So feel free to pick up the phone and call us here, 800-497-5891. All right, DX, I guess I need to ask the question, why Slayer of all bands? Why did you write a book?
Well, Slayer, fucking Slayer, man. I mean, who's been, really the book is like about three things, basically. I mean, and I'll answer your question, but the book is about three things. I mean, basically the book is a documentary about the making of the record Rain and Blood. I love rock documentaries. I could watch them all day. The stuff on VH1 Classic, I love that stuff. So I tried to do that in a book. So it's about, number one, how the record came together, and all the broad senses of how did this record happen? How did the Ultimate Thrash record be released on Def Jam? How did they write it? How did they record it? That's all in there. Number two out of three things it's about is like the impact and the ongoing influence of it. And then number three, like we were talking about, they have, where I put in, a little bit of bio, some stuff you might not know about the band, some stuff a lot of people don't know about the band. And, part of what I do early on is, I talk about my argument for Slayer, why Slayer. And the argument is called, or the chapter is called The Argument, Fucking Slayer.
Right.
And that's it. I think Slayer is one of the all-time greatest rock bands. And some people know that, and some people are starting to realize it, but who has been as good as long as Slayer?
You said long.
well, DX is Rain and Blood. I mean, for me, I love the album. It's definitely a short, violent punch in the face. But I don't know that I would call it my favorite Slayer album. Is it your favorite album?
Yeah, it's my favorite. That's something that I'm learning. Having written this book, a lot of people take their opinion very personally. It's my favorite. Maybe it's not the best. I don't know. I think it is. But
Sure.
yeah, it's definitely my favorite for any number of reasons. What's your favorite?
You
Wait,
know what?
You like Seasons, don't you?
I do like Seasons, and I like South of Heaven, but believe it or not, the one I go to the most is Diabolus, and I know that's the very odd.
Criminally underrated album.
I love that, man.
Why do you like that record? Talk about that a little bit.
Well, one, because it's different. I think in some of the right after Seasons, I think Slayer kind of a little bit, and I don't want to believe me, I don't want to get into something where I'm going to get hammered by all the Slayer fans, but I think Slayer kind of found themselves in a little bit of a rut where they didn't want to test the water a whole lot from album to album. After Seasons, they had big success with it, and they kind of stopped growing for a while. And then when Dave left and they had a new drum sound and a new rhythm direction, the album is so different from what they were doing that it really just kind of grabbed me and was like, yeah, now this is songs like Point as an example, just brilliant, man. But people, and this, dude, when you mention that album, people are like, oh, it fucking sucks.
Yeah, very much, man. I mean, that is there's a controversial Slayer record, and this is from people that can handle a song like Angel of Death, people that can handle carving Slayer into their forearm. But you mentioned that record, and people can't. A lot of people, for good reason, maybe. A lot of people don't like that record. Yeah, I like it. I think it's good. Like I said, totally underrated. I don't know if it's because of some of the guitar tunings. Even someone like Gene Hoglan, their former drum tech and drummer of any number of bands. I interviewed that guy for the book, and he was like, "Oh man, the tunings that got into the whole new metal thing there." Like, what? No,
there's no new metal in there.
I mean, maybe like they used a couple 7-string guitars, a little bit, maybe. I don't know. Nothing on there sounds like new metal to me,
Yeah, I mean, the tuning is a little bit different, but if you move forward from that album, I mean, if you look at right before that album and then you look at what was right after that, God Hates Us All?
Yeah.
You look at either sides, they went right back with God Hates Us All because that album was different and people didn't love it. They went right back into the pocket again. God Hates Us All is pretty close to what I would call a standard Slayer record.
Yeah, I mean, Diabolus. I pulled it out. I'm looking at it here. I mean, Bitter Peace, the guitar solo in that. Holy jeez, man, that alone warrants the existence of the entire record.
Sure.
Pound for pound, I think this is a more solid record than God Hates Us All. God Hates Us All is my least favorite Slayer record.
Yeah.
I don't really listen to a whole lot of that thing. But Diabolus here, Bitter Peace, Death's Head, Stain of Mind.
Point.
What's the one I'm thinking of? Love to Hate. I mean, that is almost a funky song.
Right.
And for that minor deviation, Slayer fans all over the world just rained hell on the band and continue to. And I understand why, if that's not the kind of thing you like. But I mean, flipping back an album, if you go to Divine Intervention, probably the biggest criticism of that everybody gave them was that it's Slayer by the numbers. It's like, okay, you got your sludgy intro here and this and that, and the whole first part of the record sounds like, kind of a computerized attempt to write a Slayer song,
Sure. What did you think, and I'm just more curious on this, but what did you think about the punk cover record, whatever that was called?
Well, I'm a hardcore guy. I mean, like I'm, my primary musical frame of reference is metal, but I got into hardcore very much also. This is something I explore in the book a little bit, their relationship with hardcore. So I love that stuff. Back in the day, my favorite bands were DRI, which is where DX Ferris comes from, because they used to write like their name with a D and then like a little X after it for the period.
Oh, what a poser.
DRI, who they covered, was like, one of my favorite bands. So a lot of the songs I knew, I loved, and I think they did most of them pretty well.
All right, DX, we got
it. In fact, I felt like they did it personally for me.
Nice.
Well, they didn't, but that's what your favorite band does. You're like, wow, they did this. They wrote this song for me. They wrote this album for me. Yeah.
Oh, we got a caller here, DX. Hail and kill, caller. You're on the air.
Hail and kill, boys. Well, I don't know if you just answered it because I was coming right back in the room, and I was wondering when Chris said what he did about Diabolus. Well, that point it seemed like they were kind of, and maybe you answered it, I think you were answering it as I called, that, it seemed like that and God Hates Us All had actually somewhat of a hardcore influence, and almost like, like 98 to 2001, when those two albums were released, bands like Hatebreed were getting popular again, so the hardcore scene was somewhat having a renaissance, correct? I mean, it wasn't true hardcore, but it was like the metal mixed with the hardcore. It seemed like some of the stuff on Slayer some of the stuff on those two albums was influenced like that, like Disciple maybe on God Hates Us All, Exile, and as you said, Love to Hate.
Yeah, I mean, some of like God Hates Us All, I think that is their, relatively speaking, I think that is their least competitive record. It's got some stuff on it that I really like, and I think it's definitely worthy of being in their catalog. But if you listen to, like, the Slipknot that was out at the time, and Hatebreed, and even like some lesser stuff like American Head Charge. I mean, all that stuff was pretty much on about the same level, you know? I mean, they weren't doing anything that absolutely smoked people at that point, as they did early on.
Well, around that area, you remember, around that time, there was a proliferation of that. I don't know if I call it new metal, but a lot of that, somewhat what they call metalcore and stuff like that, started to come into, you know, more into the mainstream, you know. Yeah. And it did sound like they were, you know, that some of that stuff was quote unquote metalcore, quote unquote new metal. And I think, or whatever. I like those two albums. I like everything Slayer does, but you're always going to have like the hardcore fan base that wants to sound cool or whatever, like the hardcore Slayer fan base, the hardcore fan base of any band that's going to pan whenever a band comes out with something new, you know, and just piss and moan the shit out of it. And that's why I think those two albums are kind of vilified a little bit.
Yeah, you know, I mean, something that people tend to forget is, and I think this happens because Slayer happens in pretty much uncharted territory at this point. You know, when I was a kid and Rain and Blood came out, I mean, the idea that a band could be 45 and doing what they do was just ridiculous. You know, it's like Roger Clemens. I mean, 10 years ago, people didn't think a guy that was 40 years old could perform that way. You know, and at the time, we didn't know that a band like Slayer could age like that. So Slayer, what they're doing now, is in almost uncharted territory. For precedence, however, what we can look at is bands like the Ramones and Motorhead. You know, Motorhead exists pretty much in their own little universe with their, you know, loyal cult of fans, and they're great. But probably the best example of what to look at when we think Slayer is the Ramones. Now, the Ramones never hit bottom. You know, I mean, they had some ups and some downs, and some of their records are better than others, but they never really sucked, which is what I never think Slayer did. But, you know, when the Ramones got into the 80s, mid-80s, 84, 85, and they were doing albums like Animal Boy and some of their harder stuff that were keeping pace with, you know, modern developments in hardcore, people looked at them like, oh, what are you doing? Why are you still playing fast? Why don't you just throw in the towel? This new record, it's nothing compared to the first four. You know, there was a level of fatigue with the Ramones, basically. And I think that kind of happens to Slayer. You know, people are like so used to Slayer and they expect so much from them. I mean, they're never going to release another album, I don't think, that has the impact that Rain and Blood did. I don't think anybody will, because, you know, number one, even if they do make one that's as good, people expect it from them. You know, it's not going to catch people off guard.
See, I don't agree with that, dude. I think they just did. I think Christ Illusion caught everybody off guard with how blistering it was from them and how much of a throwback to their roots it was. I mean, hell, didn't it win a Grammy or something? It even caught the bougie people off guard.
Well, I mean, it's good, but it's not revolutionary. That's what I'm saying. Like Rain and Blood, like, you know, kind of broke some ground, and Christ Illusion, as good as it was, and it did win a Grammy, and we do talk about that briefly in the book. You know, it was not like a new, fresh, exciting blast out of nowhere necessarily. So I think a lot of people have a little bit of Slayer fatigue, and I think at the end of the day, if, you know, God forbid the band ever packs it in, I think people are going to look back in maybe 5-10 years and say, oh, okay, Diabolus, I get it now. And God Hates Us All, like, okay, I see what they were doing. Because, I mean,
I hope they play a few more years, because right now there aren't that many bands coming out that are taking places of these bands. So they're like, you know, one of the last bands that's a bridge to, like, you know, kind of that period, you know, of, you know, when it was really good to now. I mean, you don't have any, like, Slayer's one of those bands that's like, I mean, without, you know, always selling, like, without always being on, like, without ever getting, you know, basically a video played on MTV, save for one or two videos on, that excuse for Headbangers Ball every once in a while. They're basically the band that, you know, I mean, they're actually, even if you haven't heard their music, a household name. Like Slayer, you know, that's a metal band, you know? I mean, like...
Yeah, exactly. Hence the Grammy. You know, I'm sure a lot of the people
Yeah.
that voted for them didn't have Diabolus, but they hear Slayer, they think metal, they win. You know.
Yeah, I think.
How about you? What is your favorite record after Seasons?
Well, after Seasons, well, first of all, and I get a lot of shit for this, my two favorite records are Seasons of the Abyss and Hell Awaits. I like Rain and Blood and everything, it's just not my favorite, you know, I mean, I don't know, I just thought Seasons was a little bit more melodic than I liked about that.
You might be wrong, but it doesn't have to be.
Exactly. After that, and as I say, it is vilified, but I like God Hates Us All. I mean, that was basically the Slayer CD I bought, like, well, I was getting back into metal, you know, so, and, like, that was one of the CDs I bought was God Hates Us All. I bought first Diabolus when I got back in, and God Hates Us All. Actually, I remember that came out September 9/11. I remember that CD came out. Well, I mean, but, you know, so that was my favorite afterwards. I can listen to all the Slayer stuff. I really don't know if I can listen to Diabolus front to back, but God Hates Us All for some reason I can, especially like Payback is just a straight up thrash song, the last song. So I'd have to go with God Hates Us All. I mean, I love freaking, God damn it, I can't think of the name right now. The last
Bloodline?
Christ Illusion.
Yeah, but I mean, as I said, God Hates Us All is my favorite after Seasons. So there it is. This has been a really good interview. So keep it up, dude. And I'm looking forward to the book. And I'm going to give someone else their chance to call in.
Check it out. Amazon.com has it cheap. Like, out of all the places you can get it, like, I don't know, book distribution is weird, like your local bookstore. And it is in all major chains, like they have it. Some individual stores do, some don't. But if you go to Amazon, Amazon has it for like $8 and change, which is basically what like an imported metal magazine will cost you, except this is 155 pages of Slayer, Rain and Blood.
Exactly. That's what I'm going to do.
It's a good book.
I will do that this week. Hey, you guys have a good night. Hail and kill.
Hail and kill, MOL.
Hail and kill.
All right, there he goes, MOL.
Well, DX, you know, swinging it backwards because somehow we took your book about 1985 or 1986 rather, and turned it into a discussion about 1995 to 2001. But
you said swing.
You know, the thing with Rain and Blood for me, and I think the reason it was one of the most impacting albums, was the fact that unlike anybody that puts out an album today, it's short. It doesn't drone on. There's no pieces of the puzzle that don't work. You know, it's just, it's 29 minutes. It's just, you turn it on, you get smashed, minutes. You're done. You know, why do you think, or let me rephrase this, do you think that is one of the main reasons that this album remains so strong today? Because it's short and there's no weakness in it anywhere.
Yeah, that's one of them. And, you know, even if you don't like a track, it's going to be over soon, you know? I mean, that's what one of the guys I talked to for the book, the rapper, producer, Ill Bill, you know, who you would not think necessarily is a Slayer fan, but his upcoming record has a song called The Unauthorized Biography of Slayer that's about Slayer being his favorite band. His quote was, you know, he said if he put in Master of Puppets, you know, he'd get bored after, you know, the better part of an hour. You know, he might skip this song, skip that song. If you put in Slayer's Rain and Blood, which is what pretty much everybody I talked to said, like, you put it in and it's like one solid piece. You know, I asked everybody what their favorite tracks were, and they were like, oh, well, Rain and Blood, or Raining Blood, and then Angel of Death, and then this one, and the other one, and next thing you know, they've named like 10 tracks, you know? So, yeah, I mean, the album just gets in your face, it grabs a hold of you, it grabs your arm, it twists it behind your back, it doesn't let you go, and it's over.
Exactly.
Excellent there, DX. So why don't you tell people where they can find out about you and where they can find that book?
Well, hey, if you want to get the book, again, Amazon.com has it. Do a search for Rain and Blood or DX Ferris or, you know, Slayer. It'll get you there. If you want to learn more, you know, if you're on the fence, you can go to the book's official webpage. It's myspace.com/, RIB333.
Yep. Don't spare any expense on those websites, will you?
Well, it works. It's simple. It's there.
Kidding.
You guys could learn a thing or two about a simple website.
Nice.
All right, DX, is there anything else you want to tell the fans about your book or yourself? Oh, wait, man, we got another call here real quick. Hail and kill there, caller. You're on the air.
By divine right, hail and kill. This is Mean Metal X.
Hey, Mean Metal X. Wow, long time no hear. Holy smokes.
I'm still listening to you guys. Is it too late to talk to the dude?
No, he's on the air. He's on the line. Go ahead.
I'm here for you, sir.
Go ahead, Mean Metal X.
Yeah. Okay. So since you've got the album, you're writing this book about the album. You're looking at some of the more technical details about it. I do have a question for you about it.
Yes.
On the release that I've got, the two songs. Where are the two songs that end the album?
The Criminally Insane remix and the re-recording of Aggressive Perfector are on.
Well, no, but before that, the printing that comes out before that, there's Raining Blood, which is the last song on the album, and then there is before that Postmortem.
Yeah.
On the printing that I have, the song Postmortem.
That's a mistake. Long story
short.
A mistake. On some pressings of the CD, the track Raining Blood starts before the song does, or I forget exactly.
Because it's different on that printing than it is in the live version. What happened there? Was that
just a mistake? There's no kind of good story to it. At some point in the mastering or whatever process, like somebody. Because the song kind of ends and then it doesn't, and then it kind of segues into the other one. Not everybody that works at the whatever part of the production is a card-carrying Slayer fan. They don't know, so they cut it short, and nobody caught it, and it went out.
Okay.
So I'm sorry, that's a boring story, but it was a mistake, and it got out. And
you mean like a studio engineer wasn't like doing cocaine and accidentally, fucked it up or something like that? Strippers came in, they got distracted, no good stories.
Nah, it's possible. I mean, the band weren't involved in that, but somebody could have been tripping, as they say.
Well, thank you very much, man.
All right, Mean Metal X, we appreciate you calling in.
Yeah, by divine right, hail and kill. See you guys.
All right, hail and kill. All right, there you go.
Anything else I can tell you guys?
No, I think that's it. But we always let our guests pick a closing song, out of the interview. So if there's a song, maybe a Slayer tune you'd like us to play, what would you like?
You have Hell Awaits handy?
Hell Awaits is handy. Yes, yes, sir.
Let's send us out with that one. This song most music fans have a story like this. You hear one song that just changed your life and blows you back against the wall and through the wall.
And how did this change your life?
This one, I talk about this in the book. There's just a little bit of info about me in the book, and to kind of assert my Slayer credentials. Like, I'd read about Hell Awaits. It sounded like an interesting record, and they talked about it like it was some kind of thrash masterpiece. And this is before the internet, so you couldn't really listen to it until you owned it. So I went out and I bought it, and I put on this record expecting it to be this ultimate thrash album. And it starts off with this dun 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 for like what felt like 10 minutes, just this slow grind. And I'm listening to it thinking, Jesus Christ, these pricks that write about music, they always get it wrong. They're talking about this record like it's some kind of thrash masterpiece, and it's just this slow building stuff, and then the song kicked in. I was like, sweet fucking Jesus. Slayer fucking rules. And, that kind of led me down a path.
All right, man. Well, once again, go out there and pick up the new book on Slayer by DX Ferris, which is called what, DX?
33 1/3, Raining Blood. And hey, I'm on the forum here. I finally, after like 2 hours of trying, I'm on the forum. I'm going to hang out if anybody has any questions, or you can send me an email directly. It's rainingblood333 at yahoo.com. just reach out to me if you want to know anything about the book. I did a ton of extra work on this, so there's all kinds of stuff I couldn't squeeze into the book. So if you want to know anything, go to the forum now, send me an email, visit the MySpace page, and I'll make some time for you.
Excellent.
Yeah, buy this book, you cheap sons of bitches.
It's cheap. Go to Amazon. It's right there right now.
All right, DX, we appreciate you calling in. Go pick up the book, and here it is. This is Slayer with Hell Awaits exclusively.
Guys, thank you so much. Hail and kill.
Hail and kill. Thanks for checking out the Best of the Classic Metal Show. You can tune into the Classic Metal Show live every Saturday night from 9 p.m. to 3 a.m. Eastern, exclusively at www.theclassicmetalshow.com.
The Classic Metal Show.